Hello, welcome to another episode of Test, Optimize, and Scale. It's an honor to have Brian Haugli with us today, CEO of SideChannel, going to go in depth with us about his background, about the creation of the organization in cybersecurity. Brian, I know there's going to be some things you could talk about, some things you can't. Almost makes the conversation more exciting, but I've been looking forward to it. Thanks for taking time to hop on.
Jason, thanks so much for having me. Really looking forward to it. Love talking about this space and just, chatting about how we got to where we are. So looking forward to this. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thought we could start with you, with your background. What got you into the world of cybersecurity?
Yeah. So, I was a kid when I was a kid. It was programming as a kid. Learning how to program on COBOL, and I had a great, not a great uncle. I had an amazing uncle who worked on a lot of different systems and was really really smart, very very good. God bless his soul. He's passed away. And he basically, the family story is like when I was 8, he gave my dad this 386 IBM clone back in like the late 80s. It was like, give this to Brian. This is the future. My dad joked. He was like, the thing that we have in the office, like what what is he gonna do with this? He's like, trust me, the kid understands how this thing works. Like whenever I went over to my uncle's house, he would show me how to program and how computers worked. And yeah, I just got into it, out of the gate from there. And it's rare that I think people find their passions early on in life that they can eventually find and build their career around. And I was so lucky that I had my uncle Fred, who gave me that opportunity, showed me what really computers could do. This guy, I just to give a little bit of color on like this, how awesome this guy was. He worked on the SR-71, the Blackbird, the original spy plane.
Wow.
Their guidance systems and navigation systems. When he left that and working on that, he went on to go build New York State's OTB, their entire off-track betting system. When he retired, after like I don't even know how many decades of work, it took 5 people to replace him. You want to talk about computer systems? Wow, this guy knew it, and he was actually my dad's uncle. But yeah, he was my uncle. So yeah, he showed me everything around this. Books, and just sat down. And he had a son who was a couple years older than me, my cousin David, who, was very, very smart, still very smart and into this. And it was great just going over there on weekends. And like, this was what I got into. Like, we didn't play ball in the backyard. I wasn't that kind of kid. We were down in his basement, like working on, and he had this huge shop and we build computers. And anyway, so like as a kid, I just had this like real passion for like building things. And then I started learning how to break them. And that was the turning point really, as like high school happened, that I started figuring out, wow, I'm just as good at figuring out how to get into these things as I am building them. So got into some work after high school, didn't go to college right away, and ended up working for a while doing pen testing. Just you're basically a company pays you to break into their systems and show them how you did it. And it's all legal.
Go
figure.
So
yeah, I was like, this is a great job. There's whole industries on this, right? And yeah, so just started doing that. Eventually went to college, met my wife. We moved down to DC. I spent 10 years down in DC working for a variety of different DoD and intelligence community agencies. And again, not a lot of stuff I can kind of go into on details, but like it was very mission oriented, very focused on national security objectives. And I worked on a variety of different programs over about 10 years we were down there. But really the capstone was at 31, I was able to take over the role as the information assurance program manager, the team lead for the cyber program at Pentagon during Obama's second administration. Wow. And I ran that team until Obama left office. And it wasn't had nothing really to do with the administration. It was just timing. And that was in 2015. And I had a Fortune 500 insurance company in the Boston area, which is where I live now, headhunt me and say, listen, you have to come up here and build our cybersecurity program, our privacy program. we need to reduce risk, right? We're a $6 billion Fortune 500 company. We have 4 million customers. We're concerned about their cybersecurity, data protection, all of this. We want your caliber of leadership here to build that type of a program. So left Virginia. It was tough to say goodbye to really easy winters and moved to the Northeast where you have real winters, and built out that program over 4 years. And then just met a lot of great people, kind of coming out of the military and the DoD, and going into corporate space and learning how private versus public sector treats risk management, and how they financially address risk management, because none of this is free. Like, how are we going to budget to reduce risk? Very different between the two groups. But in corporate, and working at this insurance company, it was really eye-opening, the reliance on vendors and smaller suppliers and smaller organizations who had innovative products and technologies and capabilities. And the thing that I saw during those 4 years working and building that program was, wow, there's nobody like me at your organization that I can talk to. I'm basically the equivalent of the CFO overseeing all of finance for this organization. I'm running security and making decisions on risk. I would hope that there's someone like me in your organization, because you're touching the infrastructure of the systems of my organization that could be making me $1 million or $2 million a day. So my risk posture is heavily dependent on your risk posture. And that was the burdening idea. That was the initial conception of SideChannel, which was, why isn't anybody helping these mid-market companies, these startups, these smaller companies? Because to hire someone like me, starting salary is like $500,000 a year. On the West Coast, starting salary is $800,000 a year. We're not cheap, right? We're high demand.
Right.
There's supply. It's a very niche skill set, especially when you get people who really know what they're doing. And mid-market, guess what? Have the exact same vulnerabilities and problems as enterprises, but don't have the finances to hire someone like me of my caliber or others. And that's how SideChannel was born. Was, how do we take people like Brian? How do we take people like Brian's peers who are done working at the enterprise and bring them into mid-market companies and startups, and deliver that same caliber of talent to build and lead programs, decide on product development, decide on security decisions? How do we bring that into them? And that's what we started with. So the concept of virtual CISO has been around for a long time, longer than SideChannel's been around. But I will say that I feel like we are the ones who have really stamped how it should be done, because I can point to really only one company, ours, that have more than 10, more than 20 former enterprise CISOs, people coming from Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies, working in one collection, in one company, servicing a client base centered around addressing risk, privacy risk, risk management, cyber risk, all of that, and having that enterprise class background. So really, like, the whole, transition from being a practitioner to being a leader in large organizations to now going back to focusing on non-enterprise organizations with a practitioner's approach and experience has been very exciting. And it's been all along, I've been doing something I've always wanted to do. I'm still working in the space that I love, that I've been passionate about since I've been a kid. And I don't know if you're going to edit out me swearing on the podcast, but my dad told me really one thing when I was 18. It's like, find something you love to do, and then find some asshole to pay you to do it. It's like, all right, that's a good way to kind of look at life. I mean, that's
well said.
That's the way that he, put out his advice. But it's true. It's that old adage. If you love what you do, you never really work a day in your life. Like, it's the same thing. But yeah, so that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and the most successful people can't tell whether they're working or playing. They're just going after that vision of perfection. And like the way your dad worded that, I'm actually going to quote you on that at some point here. Whether it's a client or an employer or whatever it may be, find someone it's of value to and monetizing that value. Through some type of finance. Like you mentioned yourself, people like you, 500K, 800K per person. So the
Yeah.
fact that you're able to bring a whole team that have that experience and at the enterprise level, coming from the DoD, it's huge. I can understand. And in many ways, I do something similar where we're marketing for startup to mid-market organizations, but really like the angle and how you guys are able to participate in mid-market accordingly. And thanks for taking us along that ride. I felt like I was there
Yeah.
with you in the 80s. You were programming on COBOL, learning about your uncle, hearing about 2015 and at the DoD. It provides that much more it provides that much more depth to what it is that you do now.
I appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah.
Now, what are some of the biggest considerations for a mid-market organization to hire you? How do they assess risk management? Are there algorithms to do so they could wrap their head around costs? How does a group go about the determination that they need to hire a group like yours?
Yeah. So risk is probability by impact. Like that's the equation. It's super simple. The thing with mid-market that I've learned over the last 4 years providing to mid-market companies and decade prior, depending on mid-market, is they buy very differently than the enterprise, because every dollar they're going to spend has to they don't have enough room to bet on anything. They really need to make sure that every dollar they spend is put forward in a way that is really going to net a value.
Mm,
So what I've seen, and part of why we started the company and really why we like leaned in is actually to kind of combat a negative. Traditionally within my sector, as much as I love cybersecurity, we are a sector filled with sales capabilities and resellers who focus on fear, uncertainty, and doubt in their methods to sell. Like sky is falling kind of things. You need my product to be able to save you from the bad guys and name that evil country that speaks Russian or Chinese. And the reality is that that's not the way to think about risk, especially with a mid-market. Mid-market
mm,
can't be scared into purchasing the right thing. Those things exist. Those are scary things. They do exist. Bad guys do bad things, and they exist in those other places. But you can't scare somebody into buying, in the mid-market. I honestly don't believe you can scare anybody into the enterprise, but somehow it actually still works up there. The mid-market is looking at a way to say, listen, I don't want to just buy the product or the solution based on how well you are as a salesperson, this product or that product. I want to buy based on what's it going to actually do for me against the requirements that I have. And what I see are three main things that most organizations are even addressing cybersecurity, because you still have this whole group of people that go, we're not at risk. Nobody will attack us. I don't talk to those people. Like, I do not actually sell cybersecurity. You either believe it's a risk or you don't.
right.
Plain and simple. Those that believe it's a risk want to address it because it is a risk, and the risk has been presented in the fact that there is regulation that they have to meet. Think about the SEC and what they're about to start putting out. There are 9,000 plus publicly traded companies underneath SEC purview that are about to wake up and find out that they now have a cybersecurity requirement on board representation of knowledge and breach notification in case the bad thing happens. Can they do that? When only 2/3 of the Fortune 500 actually have someone like me leading a security program, what does that say for the rest of the 9,000 plus publicly traded companies that are underneath SEC purview? They're lacking, right? So you've got regulations that are in place, and SEC is not the only one. Oh, I'm not SEC regulated because I'm not publicly traded. Oh, you're finance? Oh, you're a car dealership? Congratulations. The FTC safeguard rule underneath the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act merits that you need to follow this standard of regulation, period. Sorry, game over. You have to do it. Most people don't even need to do it. Most people are like, and I did this actually with a car dealership. That's a large one here in the Boston area. They're like, we don't need to follow that. I was like, you're a financial institution. No, we're a car dealership. No, you sell cars. You have cars on your lot. That's how you move things. But you make most of your money off the financing operations on lending and leasing those cars to people. Underneath GLBA and the FTC's definitions, you are a financial institution. Congratulations. You have to meet this list of cybersecurity requirements. And they're sitting there going, oh, what do we do now? So you got regulations, right, in place. If you're in the DoD market, don't even get me started. There's a litany of things you need to meet. Think about HIPAA. HIPAA has security requirements.
Yep.
You're in healthcare. I've got a line of health tech companies, really innovative, really smart folks who are like, I'm going to build this app. It's going to help me do X, and it's in healthcare. And you go, great, well, let's make sure you're aligned with HIPAA. They're like, no, I don't have any PHI, or I don't have any of that information. Really? Okay, show me the records that you're using as part of your app to show the client, the person who's using it, sharing that information with the doctor about the thing that you do. Like, show me that whole process. Like, guess what? That's a patient record. HIPAA applies. Congratulations. So you got regs. You got board oversight. Boards are getting smarter, right? And board members don't sit on one board. They sit on multiple different company boards. So they're over in the larger, more mature organization going, well, I have a CISO or the general counsel telling me this about the risk of the organization. And they pivot over to this board and they're like, why aren't you talking about that?
Sure.
Now you got pressure coming down from the board, and that's impacting the CEO, CFO, whomever to start talking about it. So you've got the pressure, right? Pressure from the top, regulations, boards. And then the other one is customers. Customers are huge. There's a huge movement. Movement sounds, it's the wrong word, but like there's really just a big pressure around customers assessing their third-party vendors or parties that are third parties to them and going, listen, I don't want to give you my data or give you access to my infrastructure unless I know what your security posture looks like. And we're talking about millions of dollars worth of deals that are being held up in the sales cycle because that company can't articulate their security posture. So why try to do it off the side of your desk? Why don't make it up? That's bad, right? That's fraud.
Yes.
Why not try to get ahead of it and try to build a program that you can actually articulate? Have somebody who can shepherd the narrative about what you actually do and don't do. That's the other key thing. Nobody's perfect. We had a joke at the DoD, and I will pick on this because I'm an Army guy, so I can pick on the Air Force. The Air Force would always come back and be like, yeah, we're green on everything. We're like, no, you're not. Nobody's perfect. Stop trying to represent like you are. The key thing on security is acknowledging your risks, right? You have 4 major risk management strategies, right? You can accept, mitigate, transfer, or avoid. Well, you're not avoiding cyber risk if you're merely plugged into the internet. So unless you completely unplug, you're not avoiding it. You can transfer risk with insurance. You can accept risk by just basically accepting what you should be doing, but you're not. Or you can mitigate it, actually put something in place to address it.
Right.
That's it. If you don't have anybody who can run you through how to go through those 4 options on addressing risk, you're never going to have a customer that goes, yeah, cool, do whatever. Here's all my data. I'm sure you guys will be fine. That's not, those days are over. The 4th one I don't ever talk about is kind of, it's what I call post breach. The bad thing happens, right? Boom, went the night, you got breached, ransomware event, something, whatever. You called insurance, you got the digital janitors or whomever to kind of come in and clean up the mess, and you're back to a state prior to being breached or the incident. And you're sitting there in that very vulnerable moment going, I don't ever want to go through that again. What should I have built in the first place so I don't go through that? Right. And that's what when you see news reports of, this school, like Baltimore County, I just saw Baltimore County just paid $10 million ransom. Right? Schools don't have enough money, period. Now they have to pay a $10 million ransom just to get their operations back so they can keep teaching the kids. Like, that's terrible. We're seeing it in hospitals. We're seeing it in major organizations. Those companies and organizations have a moment after they realize that happened and what they have to do, where they go, we really should have been proactive. We could have gotten ahead of this. We really should have done something that would have disallowed this being happening in the first place, or at the very least, reduce the total pain that it caused. And it's those clients that unfortunately learn the hard way that they should have done the thing in the first place. They should have built a good program. They should have led a program. And now they will, but it's only after they've felt that amount of pain and they've probably expended a significant amount of resources to learn that lesson. So that's really why the mid-market, or really anybody, but that's really where the mid-market's focusing now is, hey, I need to do this. And then it's, well, I can't afford to make the wrong mistake in choosing how I actually do that. So where we come in, it's hey, we're a virtual CISO, we're a virtual team, augmenting your team without being a full-time resource, which means a full-time cost, to be able to give you the ability to do all of this in a way that makes it very cost effective. And then when you do have to spend dollars to implement any type of protections or anything else, you're spending the right dollars instead
Yes.
of just a salesperson selling you whatever they're getting the highest commission on.
Well, I hope founders that are listening in are taking note, because it sounds like to really have a perspective towards this, you've probably needed to have run into an obstacle, had a breach, had something occur, and now you're taking those extra steps. Like you mentioned, that conversation that happens post of, okay, we should have had these things in place. What do we do now? So I'm imagining there's a list of probabilities. As you mentioned, risk is probability times impact. Uh, so, hey, what are the risks here? What is the probability of it happening? Let's figure this out, because when and if it occurs, and it sounds like more and more of a case of when, especially hearing you open up about all these different verticals. I mean, I have no idea, and hearing car dealerships, operating as financial institutions, which makes perfect sense, and that's definitely information that you do not want to hear as a consumer, that your dealership gave over to, some bad actors,
Right.
intentionally or by accident, just not being prepared enough. So the fact that, HIPAA, medical, DoD have all these at play, it's almost like you need to have that level of education for your space. What is required? What
Mhm.
is the next level of protection? Forward looking, where do I need to be for what's going to come around the corner based on other types of activity
Right.
that are occurring? So if you have a group like yours, even to speak with and to, combat what's, going to be showing up in 2023, 2025 later,
Well,
you
think
could
about
be
this.
saving yourself a lot.
Everything you just articulated, which I love, right? Exchange everything you said when you referenced or said cybersecurity and change it for law or legal proceedings.
Okay.
What we're talking about here now is the creation of and the acknowledgement of a profession around risk.
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
not a lawyer. I have lawyers for a reason. And I go to them for these very same things around law and contract and legal needs. I go to my CPA for all things accounting and financial, right? To give me the same type of insight and honestly, give me the layman's terms, because I'm not a CPA, about what do these numbers mean? Are we doing good? Are we doing bad? How much do I owe for taxes? You explain it. You're the professional. Explain, you do your magic. You put the pressure of what you know on the problem, and you come back to me as the customer and tell me this is what this means to you in plain English. We're doing the same thing around and with cybersecurity. That's really what the role of the chief information security officer is, except we have an expansive bench and an expansive platform to be able to do it from. So what I'm trying to get, I guess, the world to kind of view this as is, we are the next profession from lawyers and CPAs and insurance brokers. Those are the three groups that I usually cite when I think about any professional that has a book of business or a group of clients that look at them as a trusted agent and an honest broker. Right? You have a problem, you go to your lawyer.
Right.
Hopefully your lawyer goes, hey, you know what? I'm not an expert on that, but I know somebody who I trust you should talk to. Boom, you make that referral. Now you're talking to the CPA or whomever, that lawyer. But you go to that lawyer, everybody has, and every company, that trusted agent that they go to on that thing.
Yep.
We are that for cybersecurity, because that's what we do. That's what we know. I don't know lawyers. I can refer you to great ones. We're never going to practice in that space. We're never going to try to navigate that area. But if you want to talk about cybersecurity regulation, you want to talk about impacts of vulnerabilities, what type of threat actors are out there. Do you as a manufacturing organization or you as a fintech startup, do you have to worry about the threats that are impacting healthcare? Maybe, maybe not. Why start spending dollars on building protections for things that really are only impacting healthcare at this time? Save that money, put it towards things that we know are only risks for finance or fintech. And that's kind of how I'm viewing what we're able to do in really a tech-enabled, scalable manner, because we've built technologies, right? This is not just a bunch of people. We have built a series of technologies around us, because I've been doing this long enough to know the things I don't like to do, which means I'm not going to do them well. Yes, it's report generation. I hate writing reports. So we built a platform to write reports. Why? Because I want to reduce my expenses and I want to scale people. The way to do assessments, the way to do micro-segmentation, to do certain implementations in clients. Because we've seen this stuff over and over and over again being problems or not being addressed. And it finally became the time to go, let's develop the solution for it. Because we've got enough clients, we've got enough experience to say, this is the right thing to go tackle now. And that can be part of our brand. And that's where I'm like really, really engaged on and feeling really good about the tech enablement that we've built out for us as a company to take one person and let them service a many, right? And teams of people in fractional ways to be able to support many, many clients. All those clients are all getting the same thing. I've got a trusted advisor. I've got somebody I can trust and know they're going to tell me this is the way that a sane person would address this problem. But they're going to compartmentalize it into a way that makes me feel like, yeah, this is the right thing for me and I can afford it as a client, right? You're not giving me the enterprise solution, right? You're giving me the things that enterprises are thinking about, but you're telling me the way to do this as a company of my size, of my means. And that's very, very important. I think back to our earlier, point in question, the real problem within this industry and how mid-market differentiates is mid-market is either being ignored because they're not worth the steak dinner to take the CIO out for to smooth the way to get the contract, or they're being sold these enterprise solutions which just don't work and they don't actually scale down either due to licensing or capabilities. So that's why I feel like this is a really underserved market. And look, there's 9 million, I think like 9 point something million companies in the United States, 9 million businesses, right? Like
mostly SMBs.
Yeah, right. And we rely a ton on them, right? But yeah, it's, we've got clients today, $20-30 million Series A startups, all the way up to $5 billion revenue producing public or privately held companies. So like that is the mid-market, unfortunately, definition.
Sure.
But I mean, all those people have a very similar problem that is very independent of how the enterprise class companies have or need to address.
Well, you've obviously built a very strong model, and your target audience, the addressable market, is huge. There's far more groups, as you're pointing to, in that 20-30 million to $5 billion range than there are at the enterprise level. Sounds like you have more of a passion in the sense that you could feel your impact at these organizations in a very
Definitely.
clear, undeniable way, and able to build off of it and be selective of, hey, this is what's happening at the enterprise. Here's what we want to inject into your company now. You don't need to worry about these things yet. If you want to, we could put them in, but able to build your organization on those discussions, on that exchange of value.
Yeah. It's I joke that there's only 2,000 companies in the Fortune 2000 who's helping everybody else.
Yeah.
What the enterprise needs is very different than market and back and forth. And at the end of the day, I came out of DoD and just having a military family as well. I think a lot of it is, and a lot of the guys and girls on the team, I think like 20% of our staff are veterans. It's just about being mission oriented, right? There's a bit of a national security concern, right? If the companies in the United States can't exist or have problems, we're going to have a problem as a country. Just our national ability to like produce and like exist within capitalism and like produce jobs and have jobs, produce products, move products, so people can live and have jobs and exist. Like, if businesses get impacted in a way that impacts that, we're going to have a problem as a country. But as a, as an economy, and just as businesses and their brands go, this is becoming more and more of an area of concern. And, I don't want to pick on regulation, and I will be the first one to point out that I am somebody who used to knock on the fact that compliance is not security. But regulations come out for a reason. Like the SEC, the FTC, all these other groups, they're not coming up with this stuff because they were bored. They're coming up with it because it's been brought up to them enough that this is an unchecked problem. And usually regulations and laws are kind of a tail to the real problem, and they're laggards to where the real issues are. But it's a good starting place. And, I think at the very least, most organizations don't want anybody who's going to have to pay a fine or wants to figure out if they look good in orange. So it's a nice time, I think, in our timeline of usage of technology and adoption of technology and innovation, to start really considering cybersecurity and privacy as a risk to kind of embed and build in upfront. Because I will tell you, because I know what my price list looks like to clients, it is cheaper for you to start doing this stuff earlier in your development or building out a company than it is much later in that
I
timeline.
bet. Oh yeah. Just having an understanding from the law and legal proceedings side of things, and knowing other agencies that have run into obstacles, knowing the cost to defend, having insurances in play, having those types of mid-market solutions, and making recommendations like that to startups as applicable. I work with some accelerators, so I'm really just part of the marketing conversation, but I hear about these types of recommendations, these insights, and the founders that do definitely prepare themselves and
Mm.
build that right forward around them. So I've heard of all different types of companies, law firms here in Los Angeles, with some of those hacks and the payouts that have to happen, like the example of that school that you were providing. So, if anyone's listening in here and they're trying to get an understanding, how can I start going about this for myself, and to the nature of the show and packaging actionable insights, how can they test out? And test may not be the perfect word here. I know as a marketer, I do a series of tests and then look to validate with data and then do
Mm.
more of what's working. So having that initial infrastructure put in place, and then maybe they're watching it over the course of a few years, having an understanding of the actual protection that's occurring and the value, maybe seeing things happen around them, could still be looked at as a test in that regard. But how can they start implementing these type of practices? What's the best way to go about it? What's the best way to map it out? Or just anything that you guys have been able to do to test out for yourselves and build the business accordingly. But speaking to the law and legal proceeding side, I'm now replacing cybersecurity with that. How can they begin?
The first question I usually ask folks are, who's at the helm of your cyber program? If you tell me it's Bob down in IT, and you think he's taking care of it, you're not tackling cybersecurity as a risk. If you tell me it's your CTO and I talk to her and she's like, yeah, it's my third hat, like I have two other jobs I do before I get to that, your organization is not actually addressing cybersecurity. And that needs to just be kind of a wake up call for leadership, the founders, the CEOs, about, okay, are we actually addressing this or not? If you can become honest with yourself about that first, then you can have any conversation about what to go do. But if you just blindly believe it's being addressed by someone else and they can't prove that it is, you need to really knock that out first. Because I will tell you, it's back to the whole, that's as bad as, well, we're not a target, no one will ever attack us kind of thinking. You will just have a problem, and you will learn eventually at some point that it is an issue, it is a risk for you. But practical things that people want to walk away from this podcast and say, listen, okay, I learned something from Brian, what should I go do?
Yes.
Honestly, day one stuff, like enable multi-factor authentication on your systems. If I could teach my grandmother and my mother how to do it on Facebook and their bank accounts, you can do it for your corporate enterprise or your 20-person startup. Okay, just do it right out of the gate. Why? Because it'll be a lot easier when you're a 200-person and 2,000-person company. Okay, enable MFA, especially on your admins. Implement some type of email security. 75-80% of threats come in through email. Why people are just like, oh, I've got Google, they're taking care of it. It's the wrong thinking. I love Google. I love Google Workspace. They do some great stuff, but it's not enough. and neither is Office 365. So don't think you're going to flip to that side of the aisle and have it any better without putting something in place and in front to screen, sandbox, whatever. And these are low cost solutions for startups. I mean, really, you could get away with about $100 to $150 up an employee per year spend to get good security in place for everything around their identity and their laptop or their endpoint to be able to work from. And then if you can, try to put in some type of detection and response capability, whether you're installing some type of monitoring capability agent like an EDR, like CrowdStrike SentinelOne, not to like tout two specific products, but they are the two leaders in the space. Get that managed and monitored 24/7. Again, low cost solution. You know, we're putting in solutions for like $150 per employee per year. And I think that's a good way to kind of think about it as an early founder or whatever. It's like, how much is the security of my organization? Is it worth less than $200 per person per year? Yes or no? I mean, if you can make that case, which I think most people can, especially when I see some of these raise amounts, you know, it's like, oh, you got 20 million Series A, I got $30 million Series A. All right, you can spend 150 per employee for the 2,000 people you have in the firm. Like that's, and you're going to be able to have an honest conversation with somebody that says, what are you doing around cyber? I'm trying to do the right things. So, you know, and like monitoring, and then put in some type of governance. It's never good to just say, okay, we put all the things in, we're done. Like you want to make sure and check on a quarterly basis. And I don't care if it's in a Google sheet or an Excel document, whatever it is, whatever it is you need to look at, where you're just like, all right, every quarter, we're making sure that the people we gave admin privileges to are those same people. And somebody didn't suddenly just get administrative privileges. I mean, this is a very watered down version, but if you could at least check that, like just monthly have somebody who's not a developer check that the people who have credentials to all the S3 buckets in AWS are the people that are supposed to have that type of access. Like just do that. Just start doing that. And that's basic governance. Your CFO will be very, very happy to start hearing that type of information. Like, hey, we're checking this monthly. He's going to be like, great. This is great. Like that's pretty good checks and balances.
Sure. It's amazing the contrast that I see in my space. So for me, it's ad accounts and how many people are stuck on there that I don't recognize when it's shared with us at a certain point. He had talked about you're not interested in speaking with people who aren't seeking out additional cybersecurity. For us, it's equity crowdfunding, it's investor marketing, and being able to talk about how to market those versus whether this is a viable vehicle or not.
Right.
And yeah, like you said, the basics, multi-factor authentication. I can't believe that large of percentage of issues happen through email, and
Yeah.
having basic email, keep it more basic because it's so available. Email protections out there. I think you were talking about sandbox and screen, and then a detection response, a governance program. Governance again sounds like something everyone should have in place, but it's a matter of putting those time blocks in the calendar for smaller organizations like the ones I work with or even my own, to be able to make sure it's all happening. What about optimization? During that governance process, are there a series of steps that should be taking place each quarter? Are there some things to kind of improve what you're doing on an ongoing basis, get a pulse of what's occurring in the industry, or as you said, similar spaces to protect yourself, protect your brand?
Yeah, so like I said, like the first step is, you know, obviously finding and making sure somebody's at the helm of the cyber program or the privacy program. So whoever that is, you know, that's outsourced. Like, so you can outsource that to us, you can insource that with an employee or whatever. Are they able to stay in tune with changes in the landscape? Like we saw last year, actually, a change that business email compromise, basically where attackers infiltrate an email server and then redirect wire transfers and monies to different accounts, surpassed ransomware as a number one impact and threat to organizations. Nobody saw that coming. But that's great to know. Now it's like, okay, hey, the landscape's changed. Why? Because the bad guys are actually pretty smart. They run like businesses. And they start figuring out, oh, this is going to make me more money and there's a better ROI. So spoiler alert, unfortunately, the bad guys are operating like businesses. I can't get that across. Those folks go on holiday or vacation. They have payroll. They have benefits. They operate with P&Ls. Like that is a real thing. The whole concept of bad guy in his mom's basement, dark hoodie, solo rogue, that is not a thing. These are well-run teams, and their business is to get into your business. Like, there is an ROI. Anyway, I could go into detail, and there's a lot of fun, crazy stories about tracking bad guys who used to go on vacation to the North Georgian Sea back in the DoD. Like, this happens. This is not just some like haphazard thing. These guys are well-resourced. They are motivated. They have quotas. But
I've gotten a sense of that. I've seen some ad accounts hacked and the way they were re-entered and way their location was changed. I could
mhm,
tell this was not an individual. This is not a one-time deal. It's probably an office somewhere with the team operating.
yeah,
Uh, as you said, to the extent of a company and how they are continuing to see an ROI on this.
yeah. It's
Scary.
well, it's a billion-dollar industry. Like, if you're motivated in that way to, do malicious things, why wouldn't you want to get into that industry? There's no taxes.
No taxes is probably appealing to a lot of groups, but hopefully, few and far between on these bad actors. It's great that you guys are able to address this and protect companies along the way. For my last question around scale, and for the show of Test Optimize Scale, I imagine there's different ways to bring in more support for these setups, beginning with the test and ongoing
Mhm.
governance, ongoing optimization. More curious on your story. For SideChannel, how have you guys been able to scale? You've obviously seen tremendous growth and publicly traded. Any tips towards scaling for listeners that are along for the ride with you here and impressed by everything that you're talking, everything you're doing in the world here?
Well, thanks, Jason. This is a good convo. Yeah, so scaling, like, you can't scale people, or people always. Well, I've always been told you can't scale people, but I've never believed that. I think what most people say is like, well, yeah, you can't just have like one person do a million things. Like, okay, I get that, but enter technology and our ability to actually make that happen. So, we developed a product at first to actually be able to allow us to do multiple assessments, multiple report generation, data gathering at a near infinite scale with clients, and maximize one individual's ability to service many. And we started with that, and that's what allowed us to grow early. And then really looking at the problems that those assessments and the work that we're doing with clients, looking for systemic gaps. Like, why do all of my clients who are in fintech, why do none of them address these types of controls that could significantly benefit their security posture? Oh, because the product doesn't exist. The products are only built for enterprise. The products are too costly. Well, why don't we build that product that is financially feasible for this type of client? Because I could prove that there's a number of them out there that would be willing to buy it. So us looking at this very captive client base and then developing the technologies and the products, the security products, to go push into them and then sell them net new to people who aren't even current SideChannel clients. That's been one, it's been just incredibly rewarding building out products and solving problems that there was no solution for before. But then actually, yes, being able to scale what we're doing, because now we're able to net out what we can do for people who weren't clients for core offerings, provide them something new that we know that they had a problem with because we saw it in our own. And then suddenly now we come in with the rest of what we do, and now we're able to grow and penetrate a new market, a new client, or whatever, and grow in there. So really looking for these things that I think people either ignored or just said, well, no one's going to solve for it, or it's not really an issue, or the enterprise solved for it, but mid-market, we're still waiting. We're really diving head in to figure those out and build things that we know people are going to go use. So we've got 2 products out now that are addressing that area. I will say, on the cultural side within our company, and if anybody comes to our investor day on February 15th, we'll talk more about this and actually show some of our people. But the types of caliber of folks who are joining the company and why they don't just join, but they stay. We have an incredibly high retention rate with people who are former CISOs, because now they're surrounded with their peers. You got to remember that as the chief information security officer at an organization, you are the only one in that role. And you're usually the person who's viewed as if crying chicken little all the time. So everybody loves and hates you. They love that you're there because of what you do, but they hate what you always say, which usually impacts operations and slows things down and blah, blah, blah. I've got 20 plus and growing enterprise CISOs at SideChannel who now all get to work together and know each other as peers. Guys from Fortune 500 companies. I got the former CISO for Booz Allen Hamilton, right here. And they all work together and they're like, I have an honest question and I can ask somebody who is legitimately my peer on this, and I won't get beat up on because it's a stupid question or they're on stupid questions, right? It's great. And then we have this younger team that now get to work with 3 or 4 different CISOs on multiple different accounts. They would never get that experience anywhere else. Most of these people would never even be reporting to the CISO at an organization. And then the last piece is, I don't know if this really helps scale, but it just helps kind of validate, why people work in this space and want to do this work, which I think leads to their ability to want to push themselves to scale, is we're working with customers who actually want to do what we're talking to them about. I can't tell you how many enterprises I've been at or I've seen, and I won't work at any longer, where the problems get addressed in quarters and years. And our clients are looking at us and we're working through their problems in weeks and months. And professionally, that's fulfilling for me because I want to know that my advice is being taken seriously and my client is actually going to follow through on what we both agreed they should be doing, versus my old job of, well, it's not in the budget, or politics, red tape. That just gets old after a while. And I'm like, and you sit there and go, why am I working for this company? What am I getting out of this? Is this what I really want to be spending my time on? Should I be doing something I enjoy and love? Wouldn't I be rather spend time with my wife and my kids, or my husband? And you really get those questions. And what we've created is the ability for all of our team members to be able to do that. We're remotely native, have been since before pandemic. I got a guy who sold his house, him and his wife sold their house, bought a Mercedes Sprinter van. They travel the country now, and they win best Zoom background every meeting we have. I hate him because he's down in the Keys in Florida. And I'm like, are you serious? So it's taking care of your people, I think, honestly,
Yes.
out of everything, number one in thinking about how to scale or deliver anything to your clients. Because if your own delivery teams, if your own people aren't happy, your customers aren't going to be happy. The people you're working with aren't going to be happy. So that focus has been a tremendous value for us.
Sure. The people on both sides of the table. And like you said, you can't exactly scale people, but here are some approaches in terms of how you are able to develop and get that long-term team, that long-term partnership and loyalty on all sides of that. Uh, eh, I feel like I could play this for my team and be having them note and be able to apply it to our space, be able to apply it to our industry. And I got into it for many of the same reasons. Of I was one of 100 other vendors being told, "Good job, we'll consider you for the next RFP." Where now we're directly part of our clients' growth. You're feeling it from the groups that you work with. You're feeling it from the team members, and continuing to build and build from there based on what you're hearing in the market. And again, Brian, this has been such a valuable conversation for me. I'm sure listeners are getting a lot out of it. As we begin to wrap up here, any final thoughts that you want to leave them with? And if they would like to get in contact, perhaps, it's someone on the VC side, the investor side, any listeners who are founders that could be using this for their own company, what is the best way for them to connect?
Sure. Yeah. No, we actually work with a number of private equity and VC firms, and not just for them, but also they put us into their portcos because they know we're a known quantity and it's just cost effective to do that inside of their entire book. So we love working with private equity. We have a whole methodology to work with PE and VC firms and their portcos. You want to get in contact with me, sidechannel.com. You can find us online. We're really heavy on LinkedIn. We do a ton of outbound just education work. I run a YouTube channel called CISO Life, or hashtag CISO Life. And it's just a lot of education and just kind of like how to think about risks, things that you can do yourself, and really just insight into what we're trying to solve for you. And if you choose us to help you solve that solution, you want us to be your vendor, that's great. But that information is out there for free anyway. So, we really just want to see people solve these problems and hopefully select us. But yeah, you can follow me, Brian Haugli, on LinkedIn. Like I said, sidechannel.com. And I think this has been a great conversation. I don't have anything else to add because, really kind of hit the highlights. So Jason, thank you so much for having me on.
My pleasure, Brian. Thanks for joining. Thanks for taking the time out of your day. Listeners, appreciate you continuing to follow the channel. Definitely recommend getting in touch with SideChannel per Brian's invitation there. And we'll see everybody next time. Thanks a lot.